This week's episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast is brought to you by SugarCRM. If your sales team is struggling to close deals, SugarCRM can introduce you to modern, insight-driven sales. Energize your CRM with Sugar. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Andy Zoll and Jeff Ranke. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net, Industrial Equipment News, and Industrial Distribution, and we each have more than 20 years of experience covering the industry. Every week, we cover the 5 biggest stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry moving forward. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Andy at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. Andy, it's good to see you back.
Glad to be here. I think this is the first time I've been here since that number changed from 15 to 20 in the introduction.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know that I care for it. I mean, it's true,
yeah,
but I don't know that I care for it.
No, it was like when we were saying more than 15 years for a while, and I'm like, have we been saying that for like almost 5?
Do we have to round?
Decades.
Do we have to round up now? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's and then I thought like, oh, okay, I'll just like editorial license. I'll round up, and then I did the math. I'm like, Nope. I'm over. I cleared the bar.
Almost a quarter century.
Yeah, just say almost 25 at this point.
Oh, geez. We have nearly 100 collective years.
Sweet.
Jeff, how you doing this week?
I'm good, but as we were talking about before we started here, a little stiff from a couple days of softball, so if you hear some fidgeting over here, it's just me trying to make sure my entire lower body doesn't cramp up and
a little creaking.
Yeah.
Just like all of a sudden you disappear. Just like, oh no, he's just doing a toe touch.
It's just a cramp.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Pops off the
right.
mic are not electrical, they're my knees. So.
That's fair. Well, and having come back recently or come back yesterday from Automate, I definitely can commiserate with Anna right now, who it was like I came in from a show, she left to one. And that's not something that gets easier, But happy to be back from 3 to 4 days on the road. All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor. This week's episode is brought to you by SugarCRM. Tetley Harris is the largest private label tea packing company in North America. The company makes 28 million tea bags every day in California, Georgia, and New Jersey. For many years, the Tetley Harris sales team relied solely on an outdated system, spreadsheets. This new case study tells you how Tetley improved sales by switching to an updated sales tool, one that helped the team go from 100 active leads to more than 1,200. Download the new case study, How Tetley Harris Increased Sales Pipeline 1,100%. You heard that right. 1,100%. Download the new case study right now. All right, our first story this week. Walmart and Alquist complete 3D printed expansion of Alabama Supercenter. Walmart and Alquist recently completed the groundbreaking, pun intended, of the 3D concrete print project at an Alabama Supercenter. A 5-person Alquist team printed the walls of a 5,000 square foot pickup expansion in 1 week. Using 2 3D CP systems, they printed the 16-foot high walls in just 75 hours during 7 operational days, which is faster than traditional building methods, according to the company. Alquist says 3D CP reduced overall costs for this project compared to traditional construction, showing that costs can continue improving as this technology scales. One significant milestone achieved during the project was the ability to successfully print through adverse weather conditions that would typically delay and halt traditional concrete block construction. Jeff, we discussed the 3D printed Starbucks while you were out of town, but do you see 3D printed concrete construction pivoting from gimmick to game changer?
You know what's interesting, and I think you're going to get into this in a little bit here, just the growth that's being projected within this sector of construction specifically. What was kind of cool to watch when we're looking at the video that's accompanying this, and I'd encourage everybody to do it, it's kind of mesmerizing, is when you saw a close-up of the workers using the equipment, it looked like a very traditional construction site.
Yeah.
Then you backed away, and it's like, where's all the equipment? Where is all of the heavy-duty stuff that's typically on the site that creates a lot of those emissions and a lot of things that are eliminated through this process? Also a lot of the cost savings that are realized as well. So can it transition? I think what that's really going to depend on is this a residential construction technology or a commercial one? This is the second facility I believe they've done for Walmart. So there's a track record there for this company. Very impressive one at that. But when we look at residential versus construction, residential is still almost 2-to-1 in terms of quantity and the amount of money that's generated by those construction projects. So for this to really take off, I think it needs to get to that level and get into that market more. Can it? I don't know. You know, there's a lot of things that went into, and what's the name of the company again? Alquist. You know, the Greeley, Colorado gave them a fair amount of money to relocate there. There's also different things that companies like Walmart can tap into to utilize these types of technologies for these construction projects. That doesn't always flow over to home construction. So how that translates is going to be key for how this market moves forward. Also, there's approximately 150 to 200 construction companies out there right now looking to license this technology. Is that good or bad? Does that create competition, or does that muddy the waters and then you get price cutting and undercutting, and how does that all play out as well? So I think the market will resolve this, but I think the big thing is if we can get into the residential market. I think that's going to be a big step for it.
You know what was crazy for me is that when it was a Starbucks, I thought gimmick. And when it was in a Walmart Supercenter, I'm like, oh, this thing's got legs. You know, just because
of the size, right?
Just because of the size. And I mean, what Walmart's using it for, and obviously it's going to be repeatable for them. That's when I was just like, oh, okay. Like,
already has been.
Yeah. I mean, it could really go somewhere. When you were looking at this story, Andy, what were some of the things that stood out to you in terms of, you know, the size of the structure? And, you know, what do you think about it when it comes to potentially moving into residential homes?
Well, Jeff mentioned this a little bit. Their original partnership was an expansion last year in Tennessee, and those were 20-foot walls. These were 16, I believe. And that at the time, and probably still, to my knowledge, was the largest construction project of its kind in the U.S. at least. As far as the residential market goes, that was what this company was founded to do. If the name rings a bell, it's because they built what was the first owner-occupied 3D printed home in the U.S. A little more than 3 years ago. I believe it's in Virginia, and they've built some more since then. So that's where they're aiming originally. You know, construction, of course, has been, you know, something that people have looked at as a potential important application for 3D printing for a long, long time for many of these reasons: costs, labor shortages, time, that sort of thing. But I'm with Jeff here. The real important part for economics, and also for just, you know, social reasons, we have a housing shortage, an affordable housing shortage in this country. That's kind of the main crux of where this technology needs to go, and I think this company kind of gets that too.
And I think that is definitely where it's headed, because basically when you see how they map out all of these planned communities, they all have the same size slab, right? Everyone has a print that they can basically choose the basic outline, and then it's just moving the robot like from plot to plot. And very repeatable. You know, you just plug in the program as to which one it's printing and kind of set it and forget it. You know, make sure it's got materials. I think there's tremendous potential there in terms of affordable housing, especially in sort of larger planned communities. I think the scale is really there. Just getting into the market a little bit, Jeff. So according to Grand View Research, the global 3D printing construction market size was estimated at 53.9 million in 2024. That's going to nearly double to 99.3 million this year. And again, it's not a lot, but by 2030, again, 99.3 million this year. In just 5 years, it's forecasted to reach 4.18 billion. And so it's on an incredible trajectory. And again, when we're talking about construction, we're talking about like not even a drop in the bucket. Like the drop is falling into the bucket, but like it's still incredible trajectory.
There's still a lot of venture capital money going into this market as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if they sort of pick the winners, if you will, and how this evolves from somebody like Alquist offering this versus licensing it and how that plays out as well.
No, I think there's tremendous potential for the company there too, licensing it. And when you talk about it looking like a normal, traditional construction site, the general contractor, FGMI, was on site, and really they were on site and made sure that the 3D printing process kind of didn't interfere with other conventional construction tasks. So it's not like you set the printer and it's got to make the shell and then you get back, you can get to work. You can do other things while it's working. And one thing that I thought was really cool about this too is that if you want to learn how to do it, Alquist actually built a 3D CP specific curriculum with Ames Community College in Colorado. And I mean, hey, if this looks like something that you might be interested in getting into, you know, there is a spot right now where you can go and learn how to do it. You know, and I was like, okay, like I'm not looking to make a move, but like back in the day, that might be kind of interesting. Like, what are you going to school for? I'm going to 3D print houses. What's up? All right. Well, our next most popular story this week, ammunition manufacturer announces $300 million new factory. CBC Global Ammunition, a Brazilian company that also owns the Magtech, MEN, and Centerfire brands, plans to spend $300 million to build a new plant in Oklahoma. The factory will be the company's third at the Mid-America Industrial Park and be capable of producing centerfire cartridges for 9mm and to 12.7mm sizes for the military, law enforcement, and the sports and hunting markets. The new facility will create 350 jobs and, quote, be a cornerstone for the company's growth in the United States. CBC President Fabio Mazzaro called the U.S. market, quote, the world's most important market for small caliber ammunition. CBC wants to build a leading vertically integrated business, one with in-house production for all components, propellant, and critical raw materials. The site's actually pretty interesting because it's a former World War II era munitions plant. Now, Andy, when the president makes a point to say that the U.S., the president of the company, the president of CBC, makes a point of saying that the U.S. is the most important market and the roadmap ends with every part of the bullet supply chain being made in America, it's kind of hard to believe that tariffs aren't playing a role in this decision.
It is, and they might be, whether they are or not, the company didn't say, and that's probably for any number of reasons.
Yeah.
And it could also just be that the U.S. is a obviously huge market for ammunition, and they want to be a bigger player in it.
Mm-hmm.
I should note, and I'll have to check my grammar in the story, it's the third facility in the U.S., not at this Oklahoma complex.
Okay.
It's the first in Oklahoma. The other two, Magtech is in the Twin Cities and Centerfire is in Pennsylvania. So they already have some operations here. But it could just be, expanding to capture more market share, and it could also be we need to be vertically integrated to make sure everything is made in America, so we don't have to pay anything extra on it. Mm-hmm. So we'll kind of see where it goes.
No, I wouldn't worry about your story. That's probably just a comprehension on my behalf. Like, no, talking about, I guess I understood that North America and America specifically, a lot of bullets, but it's like 45%.
Yeah.
And just in 2021. And I feel like maybe that got larger.
Could be, but it's population, it's, firearm ownership, it's defense spending, it's all these different equations going into that. So certainly could have.
Talking about how many sales are made in the U.S. and North America, Jeff, I mean, really, it looks like this is kind of a slam dunk of a decision. Did you notice anything about why them locating to Oklahoma in terms of being in that specific corridor?
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense in terms of space.
Yeah.
If you've been in this neck of the woods, there's a lot of brown space, a lot of green space, I should say, that you can take advantage of for opening a new manufacturing facility. Oklahoma has and Kansas as well, really that whole area recently has a real track record of providing a lot of tax incentives and government support for new manufacturing endeavors. So it makes a lot of sense that way. Also, you're in this nice central location. You're close to Texas, where not trying to do any stereotyping here, but we know they like their guns and bullets, as well as other parts of the U.S. And like you said, when it comes to global spending on ammunition, especially with 9mm, that's really a hot one here. When they look at these different sizes, I'm going to go out on a limb and say 9mm is probably 50 to 60% of the production that they're talking about. And I mean, it's not close when you look at a global scale in terms of the U.S., Canada, everybody else. So getting closer to this market makes a ton of sense. Now, the other part, when Andy brings up like the tariffs, I think there is something to look at there too, though, because one of the key ingredients with a lot of these ammunitions is copper.
Yeah.
So, and that's one thing we do have here in the U.S. We do have copper. Now, there's a lot of discussion over copper mining, what it does for the environment, if it's worth it, all those different factors. But that could definitely play a role in some of these decisions in sourcing raw materials. Typically, that works against the U.S. This might be a situation where it worked for it.
The administration has also lumped copper in one of those inquiries as far as national security things that they could maybe run tariffs through.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another angle to that to that part of the story.
Anyone want to go after the top 5 states in terms of gun sales in the United States?
Texas has to be one.
Per capita, or
Texas is number 1. I think it's just
I'm
overall
gonna,
sales.
I'm going to go
I mean, just do population, right?
California, New York.
Yeah.
New York's not in the top 5. It's Texas,
Florida,
Yeah.
California, you're right. Then Pennsylvania. Surprising number 5, Tennessee.
Okay, I was going to say Minnesota.
It's a big state.
Yeah, Ohio, Virginia, Michigan, rounding out the top however many I just said, I guess. After a high watermark last year, the small caliber manufacturing, ammunition manufacturing market in the United States is actually getting smaller. And I was kind of surprised by that, just because, there was all this kind of not bluster, but, great confidence in setting up shop in the U.S. So I was like, well, how much is it growing by? But actually, according to Grand View Research again, the market was worth $13 billion in 2022. It's actually forecasted to be down to $11.3 billion in 2030. I mean, again, still $11.3 billion.
And that's what's interesting, again, with the 9mm stuff, because it bucks a lot of those trends. If you look at 9mm sales in particular, it continues to increase. Everything else is not down, but kind of flat.
Okay.
You're seeing fewer firearms for hunting, trap shooting, things like that, much more self-defense focused.
You guys can maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but I seem to remember that there's kind of a fluctuation as the winds of politics change. If
100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
There's a Democrat in the office, go up. If there's a Republican, they go down. So
Yeah. No, it was a wild, at the beginning of 2024, there was like a wild crush of people buying guns. Like, it was something like 5.5 million sales at the beginning of 2024. Just because of the same, political winds are changing. All right. Well, our next most popular story this week. Nissan is closing 7 plants and slashing 20,000 jobs. Nissan is cutting about 15% of its global workforce, the aforementioned 20,000 employees. The automaker will also cut its number of factories from 17 down to 10 as CEO Ivan Espinosa says the company has a, quote, mountain to climb. The company didn't say which plants are getting the axe, but Nissan needs to get leaner and become more capable of shifting as the market changes. The job cuts will be completed by March 2028, but do include the 9,000 cuts that were announced last year. The belt-tightening comes after a very close look at operations, demand, and potential paths forward for the automaker. The company had to do something. Nissan racked up $4.5 billion in losses for its last fiscal year, which ended in March. Last year, or the last fiscal, they made $3 billion in profit. Quite the swing. Nissan said tariffs on auto imports definitely played a role in the losses. The company's recovery plan includes cutting some $3.4 billion in costs, and Nissan hopes to right the ship by the end of the next fiscal. Jeff, Espinoza said, quote, "Starting today, we build the future for Nissan." Is it possible that there is a future without Nissan in it?
I mean, anything's possible in the age of mergers and acquisitions and a lot of globalization, bringing these companies together. We've seen that so much. I mean, there's no more Chrysler.
Yeah.
I'd have thought that 20 years ago.
That's true.
Anything is possible here. I think with Nissan, it's kind of interesting to look at how we got here a little bit. When you look back, and I can remember going to the Consumer Electronics Show, whenever that was, late 2000s, let's put it that way, 2010-ish, when the Leaf was first coming out and it was there. I got to drive one. It was like, this is crazy. I can't hear it making any sound. And it feels like Nissan was riding pretty high at that point, even into like the 2015 time period. And all this complacency that they talk about with this company really rings true because they got to a certain point, even with their really popular models like the Altima and the Sentra, they didn't do anything. There was no upgrades. There was no improvements. They just sort of stayed the course. Now, that syncs up with when everything was, is it Gone? Goshen?
Yeah,
how would we say Gone? How would we say his last name? And all the drama that proliferated there that we were dealing with, that's when we saw U.S. sales in particular really start to slide.
Yeah.
That also syncs up with the advent of companies like Tesla and BYD in China. So really, it's just been Nissan not paying attention to the market in terms of being more competitive, but it feels like they continue to produce the same number of vehicles, even though they weren't selling the same number of vehicles. Yeah. And this is a crazy cycle to hear from a car maker because this is what got the U.S. folks in trouble in 2008, 2009. They couldn't sell vehicles profitably, and that's what Nissan is dealing with. This seems like such a blocking and tackling type of issue here. Yeah. You need to make money through selling stuff, and it needs to be greater than what you're spending to make it.
Yeah, seems pretty simple.
That seems like a pretty common, but that's what they ran into here in terms of just continuing to make more than they could sell. And as a result, they're making some pretty dramatic cuts. The first thing I thought about was U.S. facilities. It looks like there's going to be some shift cuts in Tennessee and Mississippi, not closures. We don't know about I think we only know one plant for sure that's been announced that's going to close. That one's in Thailand. Yeah. But we know 6 more are coming and some pretty dramatic cuts. I mean, this is 20,000 employees they've been talking about here since November. Yeah. So there's a lot of righting of the ship to be made. If they're able to weather this and get through it, I think they could be in good shape because Nissan always has had a quality engineered product. They just need to do a better job of managing the P&L and the marketing elements of it.
Well, and I guess I was, maybe it was just me personally, but I was surprised by how much of an impact all the drama with the leadership at the company really had and tarnished the brand. For me, it was so sensationalist that I was just like, I thought that maybe it would dodge it a little bit. But I mean, as we've seen similar impacts with Tesla and, drama with their leader, I mean, you just got to be real careful, Andy, with who you have at the top.
I mean, the phrase is all publicity is good publicity, but apparently not.
Not when you're being
not when you're fleeing the country and getting smuggled out in a tuba case or whatever the case was. Yeah. Nissan's issues, of course, have been well documented. Jeff went through them very well just now. As far as the U.S. plants, I mean, I kind of wonder if they would have been on the chopping block were it not for the tariff situation. Yeah. It would seem to be silly to close your U.S. plants at this state of the game.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
I mean, their prices are going to go up anyway because their parts are made all over, I'm sure. But nonetheless, I wonder if that had a factor in which plants were targeted for closure here. As far as the road ahead, I mean, it's... you mentioned they're targeting fiscal 26 for a return to profits. I mean, I think people are rightly questioning whether that's a realistic path because they just had a merger discussion fall through with Honda, which I think we'll get into a little bit. But Bloomberg put together a nice little roundup of all of their issues dating back a quarter century. And they had a nice reminder that there are several other suitors who could get involved here too, one of which was Foxconn, the maker of iPhones, the electronics giant, which has made overtures before about getting into the auto sector. So that could be something to watch as things move forward here.
Can Foxconn just exit the chat when it comes to auto making cars? Just like
just kind of float your name in there.
Yeah, anytime there's a car maker underwater, it's just like, you know what? Foxconn's coming out again.
And they got cash.
Like, Enough. No, but it really made me wonder if the Honda deal was back on the table. Like, because why did the Honda deal fall through, right? It was a $60 billion merger that was killed because, first of all, Nissan's pride and just general denial hung up merger talks, which is crazy. I'll let you think about it. Well, but I mean, I get it. It's hard. Yeah. They didn't,
for maybe any other company.
Yeah, but they didn't want to be a subsidiary. Like Honda wanted deeper cuts to jobs and operations. Nissan wouldn't consider factory closures. Again, this was in February? We're not that far out of it. So wouldn't you rather be a subsidiary rather than like a footnote in automotive history?
I think they're a ways away from that. I don't think they're closing doors. I mean, these are dramatic cuts. I don't want to sidestep that in any way, but there is a legacy, there is a tradition here, and there is a customer base. Okay, there are folks that at Nissan should have some hope, so that they can turn this around. Because again, the core vehicle has been solid. I know they've cited reliability issues and things like that, but it's still, in comparison to other vehicles, maybe outside of Honda or Toyota, maybe they stack up pretty well, and their price point is a little bit different. So I think there is a way out of this. I can understand why they didn't want to completely roll over for Honda. Yeah. Also, though, if I'm Honda, I would let them do all the bloodletting and then maybe circle back.
Okay.
Because, let them handle all of that. And once they've sort of scalped everything down, then you can step in and be more of a positive presence as opposed to the one coming in chopping everything out.
Okay, more of the savior complex. Yeah. No, I mean, do you think, is there potential that there was some sort of discussions just like, hey, these are the ways that you need to right your ship, and then we can talk again?
Well, their CEO, I believe, said that the lines of communication were still sort of open. They were still talking. I think he said that maybe last month.
Okay. If you're Honda, you definitely keep this line open. I mean, there's a ton of benefit for them.
Yeah.
They of course have their own issues too. Their financial report came out this week too, and it's not, their forecast isn't super. So they might be, I think a lot of companies may be hesitant to pull the trigger on a huge, expensive deal at this stage. Especially an automaker.
Let me ask you this, though. If Foxconn ever gets into automotive production, could you buy that vehicle?
No.
Me either. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's why it almost feels like them being like more visible. Like they'd have to be some sort of silent entity in any type of automotive venture, because I think there's such a negative connotation and such a cheap connotation associated with anything that they do, that I think it'd be very tough for them to sell cars with their name on it in the U.S.
Yeah, even if they took, because I was thinking like, what if they just bought Nissan and just like didn't change anything operationally, didn't change anything but the nameplate, and even then I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Definitely not Gen 1.
I feel like we're a little more familiar with that company in this particular region than others might be. So
that's fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Still the sting. All right. Our next most popular story: Ford worker accused of stealing millions of dollars worth of parts from plants. It's unknown if they took one piece at a time, but 4 men, including one employee, thank you, including one employee, have been charged with allegedly stealing millions of dollars in car parts from several Michigan Ford factories. Following a long investigation, authorities arrested the men for allegedly stealing everything from headlights and assemblies to bumpers, hoods, and running boards. Investigators say the parts were lifted from the Flat Rock Assembly, Michigan Assembly, and the Dearborn Truck Plant. These are factories that make the F-150, the Mustang, and the Ranger. The employee would take the stolen parts to Detroit auto shops that then sold them on eBay. When they searched the perpetrators' homes, they found brand new auto parts stacked from the floor to the ceiling. According to the Detroit Free Press, Detroit's security team is assisting in the investigation, but still no word on how the thieves made off with so many parts from so many different locations without getting pinched faster. CarScoops says the thieves could face everything from racketeering and grand theft auto charges to a criminal enterprise. Andy, are you surprised that we don't see more of this? Just with the price of these parts and assemblies as they kind of spiral out of control?
I guess. I mean, I guess it feels easier to steal parts, maybe not from the factory, or steal cars altogether.
Yeah.
That's the path of least resistance, as opposed to slipping under Ford's inventory management practices, which is apparently not that difficult to do. Like, there's not a lot of details in these initial reports as far as how they did it, as you mentioned, but I mean, for Ford not to notice that rooms worth of floor-to-ceiling rooms worth of stuff was missing from multiple factories, and I'm sure they had somebody on the inside. I'm sure they covered their tracks to a point. I mean, it just, you would think this would have some soul-searching prompts for the company there.
Yeah. What do they call it? Like thrift in retail, where like the stuff that, is kind of just how they adjust for expected theft.
Yeah. This was also my first note here, was a reference to that Johnny Cash song, which was foolish in retrospect. Of course, you guys know that Johnny Cash song. So.
Oh, yeah.
That was well done, David.
Yeah.
Well done.
It was just, it's like, I was like, oh my God, someone finally did it. The song's been around for 70 years now? And finally, it would just be if they would have actually built a car. I mean, they might not even go to prison. It just
I think no jury would convict them.
Yeah, just like, hey, I had a dream as a child, and I finally did it. That
was a GM in that song, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
you're right. So, Jeff, what kind of punishment do you think they're looking at? Just because, I mean, it is an incredible amount of parts. I mean, the dollar value has to be sky high, and I feel like maybe they might try to make an example of these employees.
I think they absolutely have to. I was thinking about sort of a conversion of different things. Remember the movie Casino? When they catch the guys cheating in the casino?
Oh, yeah.
Law enforcement is not involved, right? It's the people at the casino who take care of the individuals who are cheating.
Yeah.
Also, if you've read anything about Henry Ford, okay, and how he ran his plants in terms of a lot of the union busting and other things that he did, I can only imagine what would have happened if he caught people stealing parts from his plant.
Yeah.
So when you look at those two things combined and you talk about maybe we haven't heard about this stuff in the past as much as it's taken place, leads the imagination to wonder a little bit if it wasn't handled internally at different times in history and how that was sort of cut off.
That's fair.
And we needed to, I'm not advocating for a lack of due process here in dealing with these folks, but it needs to be heavy. It needs to be severe, whatever the most significant charges are, and they need to be levied because this is far from a victimless crime. This doesn't just affect Ford and their production. This affects, obviously, pricing of those parts at every single level, at the parts store, all the way through to the consumer. And everyone feels the pinch. Right now, automotive is not doing awesome. Ford cannot afford this much stuff going out the door without any monetary value coming back. When you do a little bit of research on the low end, there is approximately $16 billion in stolen auto parts annually when you look at all different levels from the manufacturing plant, the auto parts store, the auto dealership. Guess who feels all of that? Us.
The consumer, yeah.
So again, when it comes to putting a stop to this, it needs to happen fast and it needs to be hard and it needs to be publicized and made to the public saying these individuals by name did this and they are going to jail for a long time.
So according to Car and Driver, the thieves were taking parts off the assembly line for more than 2 years. And that was one of the things that doesn't bode well for that, like in their own security efforts. And these parts are worth millions of dollars. So you talk about inventory management, but I feel like there are just so many levels that should have been able to prevent this from happening.
In the year 2024, you could just walk out of a Ford plant with a bumper.
Just like, hey, where's he going? Just like, no, it was damaged. We were just going to recycle this one anyways. And so what was crazy to me is like, I just ran into something similar to this yesterday on the way back from Automate. We just stopped at a random gas station body shop combination in Michigan. No, actually it was in Illinois. Sorry. Starts to get a little blurry towards the end there. In Illinois. And, after the guy hassled us about using the restroom before or after we purchased something, I'm like, wow, I assure you, sir, we will buy something.
Got to be Illinois.
But then, so I'm just hanging out, talking to this guy for a minute, just kind of stretch my legs. And he's just like, he has this headlight assembly on the floor. And he's like, these things cost so much these days. It's a small 1 or 2 stall body shop, very small gas station on kind of a corner lot. And he's like, that headlight assembly cost me $600 from a scrapyard. He's like, it's getting to the point where I can't fix cars anymore. And I was just like, and so when I read this, I'm like, man, I totally feel that, because here's a guy trying to like support his family and his like small business. And he's just like, I can't even fix cars for somewhat low cost buying them from a junkyard.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, so I felt for him. Either way, that does not mean that they should be taken off the line for 2 years. And then, I mean, why pile them in your house? You know, you've gotten so far away in the scheme.
If you go away from the scrapyard and go to eBay instead, maybe just maybe double check where that sourcing is.
That's right. Too. That's right. Okay. Our most popular story this week. Meet the production car that just shattered the half-mile record. Founded in 1994, Koenigsegg is a Swedish manufacturer of high-performance sports cars. A recent test of a Koenigsegg Jesko resulted in a world record. The vehicle is already known as one of the fastest production cars of all time. Still, competitors like Remitz's Damera can beat Jesko from a standstill. But in a recent test, Jesko showcased acceleration capabilities at high speeds. After hitting 62 miles per hour in 2.79 seconds, rather pedestrian, the vehicle sprinted from 62 to 124 miles per hour in just 2.74 seconds. It required just 3.9 seconds to get from there to 186 miles per hour. As a result, the Jesko hit a, quote, breathtaking 8.88 seconds for a quarter-mile time and a half-mile time of just 13.27 seconds. Only 125 Jeskos have been made all time, Jeff. And the plan is to make 40 to 50 a year. I mean, does an achievement like this do anything to move units, or is it kind of just a good way to keep the company in the headlines?
They don't want to move more than this many units. I mean, this is a supercar company.
Yeah.
This Koenigsegg, they're we've talked about them a number of times in terms of what they will do with their supercars, and they've got a very select clientele. Yeah. So they don't need to move quantities here, but it is to keep them in the headlines for doing crazy stuff like this.
Yeah.
Now, what I think is interesting about this when we talk about the thing that can lead to the thing is we're looking at a rear-wheel drive vehicle. And when they talk about the fact that it was able to stay so stable when it takes off with this much horsepower, 1,600 horsepower, and you're not spinning the tires, that's remarkable. To have that much control over that much horsepower led me to believe this is something that could possibly be implemented when we look at much heavier vehicles like electrics. Okay, so those are primarily, they're either all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive when we look at electric vehicles right now. So if we can borrow some of what we can learn from this type of application and bring it over, this vehicle, even though it had all this power and everything else, it's still like 1,000 pounds lighter than the average electric vehicle. So again, backloaded, still very stable and very safe. And that's the thing that I worry about a little bit with some of these EVs, because the acceleration is incredible. We're looking at quarter-mile times that are faster than any gas-powered car.
Yeah.
So keeping that in mind, I think that's an incredible takeaway. And again, you know, it says something to everything now is either all-wheel or front-wheel. Maybe this brings back some of the engineering focus on rear-wheel drive vehicles, which can be more stable when we're looking at higher speeds. So could be interesting engineering developments in both cases that we could kind of borrow from this supercar application, a vehicle I don't think any of us are going to be getting into anytime soon.
Maybe if there's some sort of lottery situation. But no, that was one of the biggest parts of the story, or people that kind of saw the video, was that, the 2.79 seconds wasn't the best time ever recorded, but it was how it got off the line that was truly impressive. And as with any sort of hypercar, supercar story, Andy, you know, I really feel like there's always a general interest to know just how grossly expensive it is.
I mean, just for me, I breeze right past the eye-popping numbers to go to how much it would cost me.
The other eye-popping numbers.
Correct.
Yes.
So this one starts at $3 million for sure.
Yeah.
You I believe have a note here that it goes up to $4 million.
Yeah, up to $4 million.
If you want cup holders.
Sure.
Yeah.
Have your Pepsi next to you. Do you just, if you have one of these, is everyone just assuming you have access to a track you can just open it up on?
I
Or are you
honestly
taking this to work?
This is if you can believe it, this is a part of the world I'm not very familiar with. But I mean, yeah, like I gotta assume, like maybe you don't even drive it to the track. Maybe it's something where you have it transported from your garage to the track so you can open it up.
It's a collector.
Okay.
Yeah.
This isn't a girl forgetter.
Yeah. You don't know?
No, I don't think so.
Just this thing like pulls up next to the RAV at Pick and Save, and I'm just like, where do you
What
put
is
the
that?
groceries?
Yeah.
No, just so this specifically, the trim was a Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute. Am I saying that right? Jesko, or is it Jesko?
I don't know, but I believe it is Koenigsegg.
Okay, I've like Reeve talks about that on here.
okay.
We're like, the Koenigsegg is from Google pronunciation.
okay.
Yeah, because I always thought it was Koenigsegg too,
Okay.
and I mean I think those were two different ways of even saying it from what you said. So
We're just ugly Americans over here butchering all the names.
yeah, you know what though, Car Company K, you did great. You crushed it. The quarter mile mark was crossed at 8.88 seconds before the hypercar then soared to 224 miles per hour at the half mile point. That is moving. Just if anything, I always like to take a step back, look at these stories, and just kind of how they are like a breathtaking feat of engineering that is possible.
Yeah.
And
Do you think you would be too frightened to drive this vehicle?
no, I'd be frightened to crash it.
Have you ever been like in a race car, like legitimate, like a stock car, race car, anything like that?
No.
I have been just in ride-alongs, obviously not driving.
Yeah, you were in that
And
industry.
I cannot believe how much these vehicles move.
Yeah.
Like just side to side now. They've got slick tires on them, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's underscored how terrifying it would be to go that fast in a vehicle like this.
I have been in high performance automobiles that have been put to the floor on just a highway, and I know that can be terrifying. Because it's I remember the first time I was ever in a car like that, and I was kind of shaken because it felt, the only thing I could compare it to was it felt like when you take off on a roller coaster, because just that sort of like sudden boost of acceleration, you're just like, oh, this is powerful.
Well, even a plane, you're on almost like a track, if you will.
Yeah.
With these vehicles, I mean, obviously you're not. There's no defined path that they are on. So they like just keeping the thing straight. And that's what blew me away too. When they're talking about like, it's almost like hitting turbo boost with Knight Rider here.
Yeah.
In the middle of after 60 miles an hour. That has just got to be an incredible feeling.
Yeah.
And terrifying at the same time.
I would love to drive it, but I don't want to go in cold. I want to have like a
that's good.
10 to 15 minute tutorial, web-based tutorial on how to, something.
I want to go 0 to 60 and then stay there. Stay at 60.
You know what? That was good for me.
Mm-hmm.
Hot 3 seconds. All right. Before we jump into, in case you missed it, the stories that weren't as popular on our websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our sponsor. This week's episode is brought to you by SugarCRM. Tetley Harris is the largest private label tea packing company in North America. The company makes, do you remember from last time, 28 million tea bags every day in California, Georgia, and New Jersey. For many years, the Tetley Harris sales team relied solely on an outdated system, spreadsheets. But this new case study tells you how Tetley improved sales by switching to an updated sales tool, one that helped the team go from 100 active leads to more than 1,200 active leads. So download the new case study, how Tetley Harris increased sales pipeline 1,100% right now. There's a link to it in the body copy and also in the live chat. Now on to, in case you missed it, the stories maybe not as popular on our websites, but the ones that still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Andy, what do you have for us this week?
Speaking of potentially butchering corporate names.
Yes.
This is about a company called, I believe, I'm going to call it Damera Corporation.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Spelled like camera, but with a D.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Canadian maker of zero-emission buses and charging equipment, and they're going to establish, it was announced, their first U.S. assembly plant in or around Joliet, Illinois. The company plans to spend a little more than $31 million over 4 years and add 90 jobs at its leased 55,000 square foot facility. The plant is going to make the E-Jest, which they called a minibus. It can travel, it has a range of 130 miles, and it can carry up to 19 passengers. The company received, I believe, a state incentive worth $6 million, a tax credit, and the state also utilized its Reimagining Energy and Vehicles in Illinois program. So there's a couple things here. One, pretty good feather in the cap for Illinois, which also has Rivian in the EV spot toward the central part of the state. And they also recently used the REV program to start building a park for its suppliers. So the companies that make the parts for its vehicles, they'll be able to set up shop there and ship it across the highway to the Rivian plant in Normal. And two, just from a broader transportation emissions perspective, there's, we've talked about it at length. This is a era where there's some questionable political support for EVs here. Sales have kind of flagged. They're not growing as quickly as they once were. This feels like a way to maybe make it easier to put some zero emission vehicles on the roads. So local governments can go, and they're more costly than a diesel bus, but you can go to your constituents and say, hey, this will clean up our air. We're going to save money on fuel costs. It's a win for everybody after a certain, cost point. So coming to Joliet, Illinois shortly.
Are these for like mass transit applications?
I think so.
Okay.
I was wondering that they had on the site, they have a little video, I think, of, I believe it's this vehicle moving around St. John, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
I really hope I'm right about that. I hate when I'm wrong about geography.
Okay.
But basically, because it's such a small footprint, they say it can access more places, even in an urban environment. Whereas, you see these huge buses in Madison, they can go on, main streets, and the side roads are kind of off limits to them. So I believe that's the angle. Certainly you could use it for, on-demand applications, that sort of thing. But I think that's what they're going for.
Yeah, because at first I thought okay, this could be something used at like an airport, theme park, something like that. But no, if they were available for mass transit, I think that would be an incredible opportunity. It also really reminded me of the Canoe. Like bus van, if you remember that. So Jeff, when it comes to Damera's prospects here, and a market for 19 passenger electric buses, that was the only number that I kind of for me was okay. But if you think of smaller communities with, I know that a 19 passenger bus would be enough to replace the bus my kid gets on every morning, so I see potential there. Kind of, what are some of your thoughts?
It's a tough ROI.
Yeah.
I know you have to have some champions in the community that are this is the way forward. We want to do this from environmental perspective, maybe a long-term savings prospect over traditional gas-powered buses. The size, I think, is going to be tough. You're really getting into, I think, niche applications there as opposed to more universal uses. But you got to start someplace as well.
True.
So maybe this is the beginner, and there is a plan or a strategy for expanding, because I think once you do get into that sweet spot of more 40 to 60 passengers, that gives you more opportunity. But you do need to start someplace. And again, whenever you're dealing with electric vehicles, and now you're dealing with 20 passengers or 19, that's a lot of weight. Again, so there's a lot of engineering and a lot of things that have to go right to make that work. So if you can prove it works at this size and then scale up, that's could be a way to go. And obviously they've had success already that they're expanding. So a lot of positives there.
I could also see them in very specific communities where the neighborhood complains about the noise of the bus, just hey, you know what? We could get you a nice silent EV bus. But no, this one stood out to me too, just because I always when you see someone, and it feels like we've been doing a lot of stories about EV makers not making it.
Yeah.
And so it's good to see the positive side,
It is.
Another chance.
St. John is in New Brunswick, by the way. Had it wrong.
I'm very sorry.
My apologies.
For the rest
Everybody
of your
in
week.
Canada hates
for the
you.
error. Well,
Oh no. It's going to be all right.
We just keep pissing them off. Man.
Jeff, what's
Sorry, Canada.
Well, would you say we're just the ugly Americans?
Yeah, we're just the ugly Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody mad.
What's your in case you missed it this week?
So this was kind of timely. As you know, went up on Lake Michigan fishing last weekend with some friends, and coming across this article, which was Great Lakes' $7 billion fishing industry may get a reprieve from the great carp invasion after all. So we've talked a little bit about this before. these flying carp that have gotten into the Mississippi River, and we're trying and doing everything we can to make sure they don't make it into the Great Lakes and start decimating the fishing population there as they have in other places. These things were brought over from Asia to help control algae down south. They escaped. They got into some main waterways, and they're wreaking havoc. They're absolutely just destroying environments.
They're everywhere.
So again, when you look at the Great Lakes, a $7 billion fishing industry, it's important to make sure these carp don't wreck it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a couple different things going on with this story. First of all, you have the very core of it, which is there's about $1.2 billion in government funding that was set up and promised to the state of Illinois to basically put in infrastructure that will block this carp from getting through some of the waterways into Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it's expensive. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker was ready to move forward with it, but then the Trump administration froze a lot of that funding, as we can remember. And basically, about 2 days later, the administration said, no, don't worry about it. It'll be there. But they didn't get the affirmation that the governor was looking for. So this turned into not just about a conservation battle, but also a political one.
Yeah.
J.B. Pritzker is a huge
Critic.
very critical of President Trump. He's a potential 2028 presidential candidate. So there was this sort of back and forth in terms of Trump saying, don't worry about it. Pritzker going, no, you're going to tell me it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make sure, you're going to put this in writing. You're going to make sure it's good. Finally, the administration came out and said, yes, we're going to do this. Interestingly enough, never acknowledging the governor, but saying, for the state of Illinois, we will move forward in this direction and the money's there so they can move forward with these efforts. Political elements aside, this is a very positive thing. This is a good thing. In addition to just the fishing industry, you've got recreational industries. You've got a lot of things going on the Great Lakes that we don't need carp wrecking. So this was positive. It's good that the Army Corps of Engineers is going to be able to move forward with this huge, huge project. It's going to involve netting. It's going to involve sonar, a lot of different things to get this situation under control, which I am very grateful for.
Yeah.
So
How'd you guys do on the lake?
we had a really good time.
Okay. Very good. Like, wasn't one of the solution like the laser nets that they were going to put at
They've tried a lot of different stuff, and I don't blame them. I mean, these things are crazy. They breed like great nuts. They jump out of the water. They look like they're flying. I mean, they're just incredibly disruptive. So anything we can do. So a lot of it is going to be netting and sonar. So it's not as disruptive to the environment and the community, which again, great stuff.
Yeah.
But that takes money and it takes engineering. We know we got it. So,
and it's just encouraging to see us being proactive about a situation rather than waiting for the mass devastation to the fishing industry and then being like, we should get on that.
Well, again, it's not just fishing; it's recreation.
Oh yeah,
you can take the $7 billion in fishing and probably quadruple that in terms of economic impact.
Oh yeah, definitely. Andy, when you saw this story, what did you think? Another win for Illinois?
I mean, everyone's looking for certainty these days, so it's good to double check on things. This has been going on for a long, long time. I can't remember the name of the canal, but this is a man-made waterway because the Great Lakes watershed and the Mississippi watershed, they're right next to each other, but they never hit. They come very close to each other, and this is one of the spots they come very close to each other. It's southwest of Chicago, I believe, and there's just this very narrow canal where the carp could get through if they wanted to, and they're trying for sure.
Yeah.
So this has been decades of people trying to figure out what to do, how to keep them out of the Great Lakes. So it's good that they're moving forward with what I think everybody thinks is the best move to keep things heading in the right direction.
Right. Any solution at this point.
Yes.
All right. In case you missed it, this story, I chose a story about Lego debuting 10 fully drivable F1 race cars. So about 2 weeks ago, Lego and Formula One unveiled 10 of these fully drivable F1 cars. Each vehicle is made of some 400,000 bricks and weighs a little more than 3,300 pounds. And 2,200 pounds of that are just the Legos. The average F1 car weighs only about 1,800 pounds, including the driver, but without fuel. The average F1 car tops out at 233 miles per hour. The Lego version goes 12. So, it looks the same, but the performance not really there. Well, Lego and F1 signed a multi-year partnership in September 2024 to try and connect younger fans to Formula One and make the sport more accessible. And I chose this story because I really think it goes a long way, connecting not just younger fans, but Lego fans of all ages to Formula One. Then they made these 10 life-size F1 vehicles after they announced the partnership out of some 4 million bricks in just 8 months. And that is incredible. This partnership called for what they wanted, memorable moments. And I mean, this is incredibly memorable. It took a team of 26 designers, engineers, and Lego builders more than 22,000 hours to assemble the fleet of Legos at Lego's factory in the Czech Republic. The vehicles are nearly 1-to-1 in scale with the Formula One cars. And now all 10 of these big builds are going to kind of travel the world at future races, different events, trying to bring families and kids closer to the action on the track. And I picked this story because I not only think this gets more people involved with F1 racing, but this is the type of STEM sort of projects or outreach that really get kids and other people, of all ages interested in engineering as well. Because, I mean, we always look at what that tie is going to be to bridge people to engineering. And, Jeff, I picked this because I think since its invention, Lego has been doing that.
No, the thing that I thought about initially with this is everything that Lego has done around a sustainability perspective. They've been very forward thinking in terms of renewable energy at their facilities. They spent a ton of money trying to develop those blocks out of recycled plastics that didn't work, but they were trying. And when you see what F1 is trying to do, like with their Formula E series, there's a nice synergy there as well between these two companies. The other thing, like you mentioned, is the STEM dynamic. I mean, anything we can do. Fast cars work, man. I mean, it gets a lot of attention, and everybody knows Legos. So again, combining the power of those two dynamics to get folks more interested in engineering, win-win.
Well, and Andy, when I looked at the story, like I got to say, Lego also kills it when it comes to providing B-roll and other materials to see how it was made. So, we could make this a video story. And when you see the engineers and the assemblers, I mean, they do have specialized tools, but they are building these things one brick at a time.
I was wondering if you were mad that they didn't invite you over to the Czech Republic to put together some F1 cars.
I mean, if the invite was there, I definitely would have taken them up on it. But not mad, just disappointed.
Okay.
But oh my God. Like, you bring your kids there. Like, if I were to bring my kids there and just like, what are we doing? We're going to go build a race car out of 4 million bricks or 400,000 per race car. But I don't know. No, I think it's a really cool story. And, up until this point, like we did the story about, it was like a McLaren, I think, that they made out of like some 400,000 bricks. And it took them forever. And that was like the first one that was fully drivable. Like it could turn around corners. And to go from 1 to 10 race cars is pretty incredible.
Did they race them? I was looking at the video a little bit. Did they actually race them, or did they just kind of do a demo?
Yeah, it was a parade. I mean,
see now
they're going 12.
Yes.
They're just like, hey, you guys want to go faster? And they're like, this is it. Like,
it'd be like an original Mario Kart race.
A lot of rubbing, bricks falling off.
Oh my God, that would be incredibly.
Turn into like a demo derby.
Yeah. Oh, that's got to be a thing. Just like the last vehicle with bricks still on it standing wins. I am all for it. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, let's do our final thoughts. Andy, I'll start with you. What's your final thought this week?
We just wrapped our latest issue of Industrial Distribution Magazine, and I am going on vacation starting tomorrow. So you guys are privy to some of my final coherent thoughts for like a week and a half. So hope it was enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, I hope the vacation is enjoyable. You going anywhere fun?
I'm going to what I believe to be a quiet part of the Florida Panhandle because my spring break days, such as they were, are very much over. So I'm hoping to avoid that whole scene. So hopefully just kind of chill out, read a book on the beach.
That sounds very good.
Yeah.
Enjoy the time, man. My final thought this week was that while there will be more reporting from the show, myself and Devin Verbsky went to Automate this year in Detroit, and it was a really incredible time. The spirits were high, attendance was seemed really good. One thing that I noticed about trade shows is that and I don't know why after 20 years of going to trade shows, I have finally had this revelation, but no matter what, no matter when the trade show is, people will always have a reason to gripe about the first day. And so I was just like, people are like, well, Sunday's Mother's Day, and people don't want to come in on a Sunday. You can't fly out on Mother's Day, and so Monday's a little slow. And everyone just got to get out of here on Wednesday, so it's going to be pretty light on Wednesday. But Tuesday is just, and it's like since the beginning of trade show time. They've been like 3 to 4 days. The 1 or 2 in the middle were the best, and then the others were just burners. It's like, I feel like we should have figured out a better way by now. But there's always an excuse. Oh, well, it's Thanksgiving. No one's going to want to leave on Thanksgiving holiday. You're just like,
they could just hold it Tuesday and Wednesday.
Just Tuesday through Thursday. Just Tuesday.
You don't have to do the whatever opening party thing. You don't have to worry about that.
No. Like,
who's going to that?
Plenty of other time to network.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. But it was an incredible show. Saw some just very impressive technology. It's because it's the old robotics and I think it's like robotics and automation show, and so. It was just off the hook. UR released their new UR15. InBolt has this incredible application that I'm working up a story on where it follows the part in real time. So basically using AI tied into a vision system, like if you were laying glue to like lay down this part of the laptop, if you moved it in real time, no matter what, the robot would follow the tool path. And it was very wild. Anyway, and I always like to get out in the industry and just kind of get like reinvigorated with what's going on out there. So, and other than like some mild tariff talk where everyone's like, we're working through it,
it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's a little apprehension, but it was great to get out there. So thank you to everyone that's, hosted me in their booths and spent the time to chat. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to the next event. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
My final thought is a little bit of a heads up on some of the new automotive technology that's out there.
Oh, yeah?
So, we were talking about Nissan. My wife recently got a Nissan Rogue, smaller SUV, and it's got all of the bells and whistles on it as far as from a safety perspective. The lane deal, the proximity sensors when you get close. Well, last night after softball, a little tired.
Yeah.
Pulling into the driveway, and I don't drive this vehicle very often, but she's got all this stuff on, and as soon as we pulled in, and I was kind of in half a daze, the seat started to vibrate, and I almost jerked the wheel into our other vehicle because it was so unsuspecting, because apparently I got just a little too close to something.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just, I was like, I didn't know what was going on until... everything sort of the synapses refired in my brain. It was like, okay, that's just all of the proximity elements here. So if you're an old guy like me, not used to all this new dang-fangled technology here that's meant to keep everybody safe, and it almost did the exact opposite. Just a heads up. Turn that stuff off. No, just be aware of it.
Just be aware of it. We talk a lot on this podcast about alarm fatigue. And it's already so real.
This one woke me up.
I know, but after a while of driving that, so we rented a brand new Jeep Wagoneer to drive to Detroit, which was a beautiful drive. You know what? There's a beautiful.
How can it not be?
Beautiful time.
Through the heart of Chicago.
With seeing just God's country out there. It was great. But there, it was. We're not very familiar with the car, but every once in a while there would be a ping or a beep or a chirp, and we're just like, everyone would look at each other and just, it's fine, right? I'm sure it's fine. And it was, so it made me think of alarm fatigue, where I'm just like, it's going to be louder if it's serious, right? And that was Rhea just kind of all came to terms with that. Like, well, if it's a big deal, it'll probably be bad. And also 60 miles on the car when we started driving it, had 166 or 1,066 when we brought it back, and the check engine light was on. Just brand new car.
Wow.
Yeah. Just, anyway, that's a different story.
Sure.
But
none of those since you've jerking the wheel into the other lane, I almost did in my own garage.
No, that's good that you didn't total out 2 cars at once.
Yeah, that would have been embarrassing.
I'm surprised
How did you do that? The safety stuff scared me.
So, it made the chair vibrate?
It's like a vibration and the little ping. It's like an audible and a sensory dynamic with this.
Man.
That's supposed to make you hit the brakes instead of, say,
it makes you
jerk the wheel into another car?
It makes you very aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
Almost too aware in my case, I guess.
Yeah, but 4D safety.
Yeah.
They'll blast you with cold air too.
I'm putting this as much on operator error as anything else, but it was exhilarating.
well, just take her out on the road a couple more times, get used to it. Oh, man. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Andy, Jeff, or David at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live. For Jeff Ranke and Andy Zoll, I'm David Manty. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.